Imagine sailing thousands of kilometers away from the Philippines, crossing Indonesia, passing the Indian Ocean, and finally arriving beside Africa. You step onto a massive island called Madagascar. Because of its location, you would expect its people to speak a language closely related to those found on the African continent. But when linguists studied the Malagasy language, they discovered something surprising. Its deepest roots do not come from Africa. Malagasy belongs to the Austronesian language family, the same broad family that includes Tagalog, Cebuano, Malay, Indonesian, Hawaiian, and hundreds of languages across Southeast Asia and the Pacific. How did a language related to Philippine languages travel more than 6,000 kilometers across the ocean and become the national language of an African island? The answer involves ancient sailors, powerful trading networks, genetic evidence, and one of the most extraordinary maritime journeys in human history. Madagascar is located near the eastern coast of Africa. Its people have strong African ancestry and cultural influences, but the structure of the Malagasy language is primarily Austronesian. Its closest known linguistic relative is Maanyan, a language spoken in southern Borneo. Malagasy also contains influences from Malay, Javanese, African languages, Arabic, and other languages connected to Indian Ocean trade. This is not based on a few words that happen to sound alike. Linguists have compared vocabulary, grammar, sentence patterns, and regular sound changes across many languages. One example is the Malagasy word for eye, maso, which is related to mata in Tagalog and Cebuano. The Malagasy word for stone is vato, while the Tagalog word is bato. The Malagasy word zanaka, meaning child, is also related to words such as anak, which appear throughout the Austronesian world. These similarities reveal a shared ancient origin. But they also create an enormous mystery. If the ancestors of the Malagasy came partly from Southeast Asia, how did they reach an island beside Africa? The story begins with the Austronesian expansion. Several thousand years ago, Austronesian-speaking populations moved from Taiwan into the northern Philippines. Over many generations, different groups continued south through the Philippine archipelago and into island Southeast Asia. They carried farming knowledge, pottery, domesticated plants and animals, and advanced maritime technology. The Philippines became an important part of this wider maritime world. There was no modern Philippines, Indonesia, or Malaysia at the time. Instead, there were many communities connected through related languages, trade, navigation, and intermarriage. Some Austronesian groups traveled east into the Pacific, eventually reaching places such as Polynesia, Hawaii, New Zealand, and Easter Island. Others moved west through Borneo, Java, Sumatra, and the Indian Ocean. At some point during the first millennium, sailors carrying Southeast Asian languages and ancestry reached Madagascar. How they completed the journey is still debated. They may have traveled through organized trading networks. They may have stopped in India, Arabia, or East Africa before arriving. Some researchers have even suggested that certain voyages could have been accidental, with boats carried west by winds and currents. The evidence confirms a Southeast Asian contribution to Madagascar, but it does not tell us exactly who traveled, how many voyages occurred, or whether the first arrival was planned. Genetic research shows that modern Malagasy people carry both Southeast Asian and African ancestry. Madagascar was not populated by one group alone. Its population developed through contact and intermarriage between Austronesian-related settlers, African communities, and later migrants connected to Indian Ocean trade. Then scientists uncovered one of the most fascinating details in the entire story. A study using mitochondrial DNA suggested that the surviving Southeast Asian maternal ancestry of Madagascar may trace back to a remarkably small founding population. One model estimated that it could have involved approximately 30 women, most of whom carried Southeast Asian ancestry. Mitochondrial DNA is passed from mothers to their children, allowing scientists to study ancient maternal lineages. However, this does not prove that exactly 30 women sailed alone in one boat and founded the entire Malagasy population. The number is a statistical estimate of the maternal lineages that survived. More people may have arrived, and some genetic lines may have disappeared over time. Still, the possibility is astonishing. A relatively small number of women may have contributed ancestry that survived for more than 1,000 years and can still be found among millions of Malagasy people today. Language preserved their journey even more clearly. Malagasy remained fundamentally Austronesian, despite centuries of contact with African languages. It changed, absorbed new words, and developed its own identity. But its grammar and much of its core vocabulary continued to reveal its Southeast Asian origin. The settlers also brought knowledge that influenced life on the island. Madagascar became known for rice cultivation, especially in its central highlands. Its terraced and irrigated rice fields can look familiar to visitors from Southeast Asia. Madagascar's agriculture developed through both African and Asian contributions, but several rice farming practices show strong Southeast Asian influence. Boat technology provides another clue. Outrigger canoes are used in Madagascar and throughout the Austronesian world. Similar designs appear in the Philippines, Indonesia, and the Pacific. These boats reflect a shared maritime tradition that allowed ancient communities to cross long distances over open water. Madagascar's music, food, architecture, burial practices, and oral traditions also contain both African and Southeast Asian elements. The island is not a copy of an ancient Asian culture. It is something unique, created when different peoples met, mixed, and built a new society. So where do Filipinos fit into this story? It would be inaccurate to say that modern Filipinos directly founded Madagascar. The closest linguistic connection points towards southern Borneo, and the people who reached Madagascar likely came from several communities across island Southeast Asia. However, Filipinos are still connected to this history. The ancient populations who passed through and settled the Philippine archipelago belong to the same wider Austronesian world. Philippine languages preserve part of the same linguistic inheritance, while traditional Filipino boats and seafaring knowledge developed within the same maritime culture. When a Malagasy word resembles a word in Tagalog or Cebuano, it does not mean Madagascar borrowed a modern Filipino word. It means both languages inherited something from distant ancestral populations that were connected thousands of years ago. They are distant relatives whose shared history was written across the ocean. That is what makes Madagascar remarkable. It stands beside Africa, carries strong African ancestry, and has a culture deeply shaped by African history. Yet its people speak a language whose oldest roots lead east toward Borneo and the wider Austronesian world. The island proves that oceans did not always divide ancient civilizations. For skilled sailors, oceans were highways. More than 1,000 years ago, people crossed the Indian Ocean without engines, radios, GPS, or modern maps. They relied on stars, currents, winds, birds, cloud formations, and knowledge passed from one generation to another. Whether their arrival in Madagascar was deliberate, accidental, or part of a larger trading network, they accomplished something extraordinary. Their descendants later mixed with African communities and other migrants. Together, they created a population that was not simply Asian or African. They became Malagasy. Today, every conversation spoken in Malagasy carries a faint memory of that ancient voyage. Every related word shared with languages in Borneo, Indonesia, and the Philippines is a clue left behind by people whose names history never recorded. They did not leave giant monuments explaining where they came from. Their greatest monument was the language that survived them. So the next time you look at Madagascar on a map, do not see only an island beside Africa. See the western frontier of an ancient Austronesian journey. See a place where African and Southeast Asian histories became one. And remember that inside the Malagasy language is a distant echo of the same linguistic world that shaped Tagalog, Cebuano, and many other Philippine languages. What surprised you the most about this story? Was it the connection between Malagasy and Philippine languages, the journey across the Indian Ocean, or the genetic evidence pointing to a small founding maternal population? Share your answer in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And before you leave, check out our other videos for more fascinating stories about the Philippines and its surprising connections to the rest of the world.